Hello, this is Sparrow Speaks. You're listening to your host, Sparrow. My pronouns are he, him, and Zazos, theirs. This is your reminder to drink more water. And right now we are on episode 8, part 2 of my perception of the soul and connections. And I guess this episode is going to be more so about my idea about purposes, um, which is still kind of a loose concept, but I feel like I've thought about it for enough, like months or years, whatever, that I could talk about it. Um, yeah, some of these ideas fly in, and then a few months later, I'm like, no, that doesn't fit. But I'm on the track, so to what my truth is. Oh yeah, I wanted to say in the last episode about perceptions that if you think about yin yang and Taoism, um, everyone's perception is true and everyone's perception is false. Um, it just depends on how you're looking at something. And so I think that's important to preface, because I'm about to bring up the big J word, Jesus. I feel like that if you take the Bible out of context, it really does have some really good um, metaphysical, philosophical ideas. But just real quick, I wanted to say that I wonder if when Jesus died, like he split into all these different other pieces, just as any other human would. Um, and so the idea of this returning of Jesus, of him coming back to earth, is really talking about like an entire swath of people who come back at once. So I do feel like that's happening right now. I'm having some weird other thoughts that I really like, but I don't feel like I can dive into it this episode because it could be false. They're just brand new ideas. Um, False for me, I want to preface. Um, but oh yeah, if someone is curious, if you saw the last episode and you're curious how someone could be reincarnated part of a pop culture deity or something that's pretty new in the world. Now, I believe that there can be new energies in the world, um, but everything comes from a core of something. Even if it's your first ever human life, you could have been a rock before that. There was a time where nothing existed, but the nothing is equivalent to death, you know? And so everything after that is birth. So most things, if not all things, are from something else. Um, so that being said, I think people can make astral connections as well, while they're in their human form through their dreams, which I believe to be your imagination, which is your connection, your astral, your universe is astral. And so I've had many dreams, both lucid and not lucid, where I've had a deep connection with a person um, who I don't know in this life. And like they say in Inception, um, all the faces you see in your dream are faces you've seen in this world, even if you've just seen it for a moment. I believe you can see deities, and sometimes you meet people in your dream that you haven't met in this world yet. I believe you can. There are some situations where you can meet a face you've never met before. So, if you have a child in the astral, or if you in your dream, or you were this other character, you exist in another dimension. I'm thinking about how weird I am, and I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to meet more people who have these out there woo-woo ideas that I do. Like, TED Talk, hit me up, or somebody. Even if these ideas are just ideas, they in themselves become a truth, because then there's a potential that every part that's broken off of me, every time I die or have a mini death, has the potential to believe the same thing. And yes, I do believe, when coming back to what I said in the last episode, sorry, I want to sidetrack. When you have an ego death, or have a rough splitting up with someone and you don't cut the cord, part of your soul can stay with them. It's a version of you aren't anymore. But because it's in their mind, it's in their astral, it's in their universe, and it affected how they are. And you can shed those parts. But a lot of people just keep wounds their whole life, or characteristics, even if you don't speak to the person anymore. That is, in its way, a reincarnation. But I also believe you can have reincarnations and get random things, soul bits in you. And I say this because I don't think it'll be too graphic. If it is, I'll put a little thing down below, or on the screen, saying where you can skip up to. But I had to go in for my top surgery twice. It didn't, it wasn't sealed fully perfectly, Apparently this is very common with like larger chests. But when I came back from the second surgery, I felt like part of me was missing, and or a new part had come into me. And so now I wonder if people in the hospital, parts of them can die and just not come back to the soul correctly. Because when I came back to, I had a message, and like this woman wanted to tell her husband that she still loved him, and there was no person in that room who fit that description. The nurses thought that I was just crazy on the anesthesia, but I actually have a very strong tolerance to that kind of stuff, so I was coherent. And like this side didn't heal as well. It like felt very damaged. And I don't want to diss on my doctor. I had a phenomenal surgeon, but maybe someone on her team or something. Something got messed up. Part of my soul didn't come back. And I had actually made a promise to myself. Well, I made a choice before I went into surgery that I wanted to pursue my painting more. And then I completely forgot. Like, it didn't exist when I came back. And you can also lose parts of your soul. Wow, this is 10 minutes of just ways you can lose your soul. Um, you can lose part or all of your soul by getting lost in the fairy realm when you're meditating or dreaming, which is why it's good to have a fairy guide if you are not part fae yourself. And fae, of course, would be one of those astral past lives. Unless somehow your human line got entangled with that. But so, yeah. Oh, yeah, and you can lose parts of your soul due to trauma. Um, it's just too painful, and that part just dies. Um, so there was a part of myself meditating when I was healing. I did bring back a part of my soul that had been damaged when I was like almost 4. Just hair trauma stuff. I might get into it another episode. Oh, speaking of which, I wanted to say that my locks are starting to look like, especially this one, little bee legs. I think that's so cute. Um, oh, speaking of which, um, I don't know if I can find it right now. Some of my locks still have blonde at the tips. There's some. Um, and I do believe that is from my past life. So the more lessons I learn, the more my hair grows and sheds. I feel like by the time those blonde bits of hair from when my hair was teal over a year ago, it'll be like a whole new me. It'll be the end of this particular metamorphosis. We're always changing and growing, but I've been going through a specific death and rebirth that started kind of before my no, it was all in the my Saturn's return, but I'm still wrapping up some of that. But you can cut cords by just cutting the hair altogether. Um, this is my second time growing my locks, and the first time I shaved it somewhat into the pandemic, like a lot of people. But those were like so unhealthy, and it was just a sign of me not taking care of myself. And so I still have one of those locks in my like special like soul box, I guess I'll call it, my mini altar. Um, and like these locks are completely different, way more healthy, and yeah. So I'm gonna backtrack. We're already at almost 15 minutes, but the last one was like 25 minutes, so we got like 10 more minutes. um, but I feel like our souls have a combination of purposes, and I'm still unraveling what this means for me, what all my purposes are, because some people have none and some people have multiple. And Yeah, it's just really interesting. So I believe you can have desires from your last strong past life. So like wherever the core of your soul was before. Um, Something you wish you had done or happened more in your life as you're dying. And so um, my last really big life, I don't know if I was doing anything in between um, the beginning of the last century and this century. I definitely wasn't a human. Um, I don't think I was an animal either, unless I was a bird, which is why I feel connected to Sparrow. Um, but oh shoot. Okay, let me rewind to this. If you're listening to all of this, this is fantastic. I'm glad it resonates with you. If you didn't get this far, at least that person was drinking water. um, but with pop culture deities, the reason why I bring up dreams is I believe that we can have connections through those dreams. And so someone's story, because dimensions exist in on other vibrations and stuff, um, there could be a version of us, like say there's a pirate Sparrow that that can go from being in your mind to being in someone else's mind, and then they make a story about it. Um, and this person is not you, um, but it is kind of you. And so, in your next life, next incarnation or whatever, you can feel very drawn to that story, um, to that character. And that could be because either your astral family in a dream or they're another version of you. Um, but in general, as you come closer to your higher self, yeah, um, you could have part of a deity in your um, soul, which I do really want to talk about more, but I'm going to reverse back to purposes. In my past life, I've lived a lot of short human lives, kind of back to back. So it makes my brain think sometimes that I'm not going to live a long life, um, which sounds sad, but I'm clear cognizant and I know I'm going to live till I'm 85. So people are going to think that's weird, and then they're going to go back and be like, he was right. Um, but I feel like that past life's wish was to be seen. Um, and so I do feel like one of the very first sentences I ever said was, look at me. It's just been something I've craved. The fuel for my soul is attention, um, among other things. But then there are other parts of me. I wished for a really long time when I was a kid that I could fly. Um, and that could be the bird part. Uh, and Fae part too. So I don't know. It could be in a Fae life. Uh, oh, but yes, these um, deities or spirit guides. They don't have to be from a pantheon specifically. Um, I guess I'm coming back to this anyway. So I believe that either deities are huge energies we gave names and through offerings animated themselves, and I guess it's more of the and, they are kind of like super tulpas, egregores, forms, whatever you call it, um, that are energy made. But so I believe um, I am both pagan and I believe that maybe humans came before the names of these deities. Um, so your connection with fire, your connection with the sun, your connection with death. Of course, in ancient lives, if you had ancient lives, you would be worshiping these people by a certain name. But I still believe as humanity went on, we were still worshiping these energies just without names. Worshiping your time in the sun, worshiping the fire, the heating that keeps you warm in the winter. Even if you're just telling these stories to your children or your nephews or nieces or whatever, or dressing up Halloween parties, those are offerings. You feel a connection to something, and so since I'm clearly very mixed, I have a lot of connections to a lot of different pantheons, and I feel like, oh, I've had dreams, literal dreams. I had a dream once where I was living life through Loki's eyes, and like how he carried his followers like to their next life sometimes, or and had that connection with them, and or found them again, so in that way, part of your soul can be connected to that deity. So one day you embody that energy yourself. Now, I'm God's spouse to Loki, but I do not believe that I am a reincarnation of him. I actually believe I'm a reincarnation of Helios or some other ancient sun god, based off of what Persephone told me once. And you can take that however you want. It doesn't mean I'm greater than anyone else. It just means I have a very strong connection to the sun. I am the kind of the embodiment of the sun. And so another one of your like purposes can be more so like a gift. So my smile and my laugh, my joy is a gift. So in a way that is a purpose, is to bring joy to other people. Very often I'll be out and I'll just make a random comment or joke or compliment, and someone will tell me that I've made their day. And anyone can do that, but I very much feel like my joy is my essence. I feel like very strongly attached to the sun card and the tarot. And I feel like Beep boop boop boop. It's getting late. My thoughts are fading away. I'm gonna wrap this up since it's over 25 minutes. But um, through those gifts, it could be your knack for something in art or math or your eyebrows or claircognizance, clairsentience, a gift from these energies. You can also have a desire from them, like a purpose from your guides. Um, and I do feel like mine, at least at this moment in my life, I feel like mine is to do what I want, to be free as a neurodivergent queer black man. And that might sound spoiled, but when I get what I want and I like actively go for what I want and hype other people up, they also go for what they want, and all of our little purposes kind of connect. I've always believed that the universe is one giant web or blanket, and so these connections help us all elevate and reincarnate to more enlightened versions. So joy, whatever I want, being seen. I've had past lives where I've definitely felt like I needed to be punished for things I had done in even more, like in even older lives. So if people wonder, they're like, why am I being punished? I'm sorry. It's just like the shame that like built up over years from the life you were living. Because as I said before, you can have a life where nothing bad really happens to you. You don't give anything to people. That's because that's what you believe. And so, like, the shame can catch up with you in another life, but you can have a perfectly good life while you're here. I will get into it in another episode, but I believe that children's souls, like, kind of what you manifest is slightly different because you're under an authority's blanket. Like, if you're not like a homeless kid, you know. And children can manifest things, but things can happen to them not only from their karma, but from the authority figures in their lives, like their parents, perspectives. That's just like catching on to the kid. And so I think the moral of this part and the first part is to cut cords when it's necessary, not early, because if you try to cut your cords early, it can be very painful and not work. But one day, yeah, it is good to like shed a connection if you don't want to accidentally take that into the next life. But so that's why marriage and stuff like that. I'll talk about my beliefs about romantic stuff and marriage and bonding and all that stuff, but that's why it's important, is you're deciding you want to find that person in your next life. And so that's also why it's not something you should just jump into. But it's been about 30 minutes. If there are more purposes that I have, I do have, for some reason, I've wanted choice. I don't know if that comes from an astral life or from a human life, but my challenge in this life, to be seen, I guess, is to make choices. And so that could be heaven or hell, up to me. Um, but yeah, thanks for listening. All my links are in my link tree down below. If you like this, let me know. If there's anything else you're interested in talking about, I am eventually going to get into the concept of time, but that's a little looser in my brain again. And my big thought project since I moved to this house a little before um, is the concept of like good and evil and what those energies are. Gosh, I have so many things I can talk about, and this is why I break them into chunks. If you listen so far, like, that's really freaking awesome, like I said. I appreciate you being here. Night.